Post your city and the time on the clock right now before settling in. Because what follows isn't just a story. It's the kind of thing that gnaws at you for days after. The kind of splinter you can't dig out no matter how often you scrub your hands. He wakes at 5:15, the sky outside a bruised purple, the hum of his old refrigerator the only sound. For him, this is sanctuary, the quiet before the chaos. When a man can sip black coffee strong enough to strip paint, tug on steel-toed boots that feel more like bones than leather, and remember who he is. A carpenter, a builder, someone who transforms raw splintered wood into shelter, safety, permanence. Historians still argue whether medieval guild craftsmen were closer to priests or soldiers in their discipline, and he feels a kinship with both. Each scar on his hand a verse in that long, rough poem of labor. The site he's on sits in one of those neighborhoods halfway through its own identity crisis. Modest homes gutted and flipped into boxes that look like they were copied from the same blueprint of sterile money. To him, the smell of primer and cut wood isn't just progress. It's rent, it's dinner on the table, it's dignity. But every morning he notices her, perched on the pristine porch next door, a woman in her 60s with hair like lacquered straw and a silk robe that catches the sunlight. She doesn't watch the crew. She watches him, the only black man on site, with eyes that audit, dissect, convict. Jokes are made about her gaze, but there's nothing funny in the chill that climbs his spine when he catches it. You know that prickling on the back of your neck when you feel like a security guard is shadowing you through the store? Multiply that by 10, add manicured nails tapping porcelain, and you've got her. One day the boy appears, a kid in pajama pants and a Superman shirt, bouncing a ball like his mom told him to guard the fort. He studies the carpenter with that same narrowed focus, a tiny apprentice learning suspicion before multiplication tables. The man tries to drown it out with the percussion of his hammer, but some stairs seep through no matter how many walls you build. And then, on a Thursday hot enough to make the air taste like wet cloth, she finally crosses the lawn in her white dress and perfume cloud, ignoring everyone but him. She says one word, "You," like it's a summons. He lowers his sandwich, jaw tight, ready for whatever insult might come, but not ready for what she does say. "You look strong." Strong and available. That's the crack, the first glimpse of the madness behind her perfect facade. She gestures to the boy and announces that his time, his labor, his manhood itself should be repurposed to babysit for free, a decree disguised as a request. He stands, 6'3" of steel and muscle, but she doesn't see a man, she sees a tool. His reply is sharp, stripped of all deference. He's a carpenter, not her nanny, not her playmate, not available. Her face curdles, her voice drops to a hiss. "Do you know who I am?" And when he says no, when he refuses to bend, she spits the two words that explain everything. "You people." That's when he feels the shift, the weight of centuries of stereotype pressed onto his shoulders in a single phrase. It isn't about her kid, never was. It's about power, about putting him where she thinks he belongs. The argument doesn't die on that construction site. It metastasizes, spills into the street with the boy as a silent witness, clutching his toy while his mother's voice splinters the air. She shrieks about respect, about being dismissed by the help, her finger pointed like a loaded weapon while he just stands, arms crossed, trying to hold himself together. He knows the script she's writing in her head, and it isn't one where he gets to be the hero. The tipping point comes when she takes that theatrical breath, clutches her jeweled phone, and hisses the two words that turn stomachs cold. "I'm calling." Police. He's been around long enough to know what that means. A white woman trembling on her porch, a black man in work clothes standing tall across the property line. The story is already written before sirens ever sound. When the squad car glides up, they walk right to her. Of course they do. She's the one who called. She's the one who belongs. Tears stream down her cheeks on cue, and her words fall like hammer blows. Aggressive, threatening, trespassing. His crew, those men he thought of as brothers, find sudden fascination in their boots. And then the younger cop rests his hand casually on his holster. Not officially a threat, but enough of a reminder. He lifts his arms slow, measured, insists he was just on his lunch break, but it doesn't matter. In their eyes, he's already suspect. Historians still argue whether body language speaks louder than words, and here, his silence screams guilt louder than any sentence he utters. They frisk him like a felon and tell him, gently, to learn to walk away. Her lies earn sympathy. His truth earns a lecture. But she isn't finished. That night, she edits her video, cropping the beginning where she demanded unpaid childcare, starting instead with his firm, "Ma'am, you need to leave." She uploads it to the neighborhood watch page with a caption dipped in poison, a grieving widow terrified of a thug worker. Within hours it spreads, shared, reposted, devoured by strangers who never met him. The comments read like a mob chanting outside his window. "Dangerous animal. Should be arrested. Someone teach him a lesson." And then Frank calls. His boss, tired, voice tight with fear. Contracts are at risk. Clients are panicking. Reputations are fragile. "Stay home for now," Frank says. "Suspended with pay." Those 3 words feel like a brand across his forehead. Soon neighbors cross the street to avoid him. Even Mr. Kim at the corner store barely meets his eyes. A note slides under his door. "Go back where you came from." Funny, he thinks bitterly, considering he was born 3 miles from here. Days blur into pacing his apartment, refreshing the post, watching the venom multiply. And then, an unexpected twist. On a reckless drive through her neighborhood, he spots the boy alone, kicking a ball without spirit. Their eyes meet across the street. The boy says quietly, "Mom showed me the video. She said you were scary, but you just look sad." He admits she talks to her dead husband's picture at night, that she tried to get his teacher fired once too. For the first time in weeks, the carpenter feels a crack in her perfect facade. A hidden witness, a child soldier whispering the truth through enemy lines. That small confession from a boy in pajama pants is the rope he clings to when the tide of lies nearly drowns him. He calls Tamika, his cousin, a paralegal with more fight than most full lawyers he's met, and lays it all out. The porch, the police, the viral smear, the boy's words. She listens without interrupting, stirring her coffee, and finally says, "This isn't gossip. This is defamation, tortious interference, emotional distress." Big phrases, sharp enough to cut through his fog. She promises help, even pro bono if needed, because sometimes injustice is so blatant it demands a fight. Their first move, track down that teacher the boy mentioned. And wouldn't you know, they find her, Ms. Nami, kind eyes but weary shoulders, who recounts a year of harassment, false accusations, and official complaints, all from the same woman. She still has the file, thick with receipts and affidavits. It's not just a crack in the facade, it's a wrecking ball aimed at her credibility. The case against him collapses almost overnight. The DA won't touch it, the burglary charge evaporates, and suddenly the predator is exposed as a serial accuser. A journalist picks up the story, and this time the editing isn't in her hands. Cameras capture his calm explanation, Frank corroborates. The teacher supplies documentation, and a crew member admits he saw her staging her phone before the meltdown. On air, she shrieks, "No comment," and slams her door, a perfect contrast to the trembling victim she pretended to be. Social media whiplash kicks in. Yesterday's thug is today's survivor, while her name curdles in headlines. Charities cut ties, neighbors whisper, her own sister removes the boy for safety. She's left alone in that perfect house that becomes her prison. He settles, yes, enough money to patch wages and buy time, but more than that. She retracts every word on record. Frank calls with an apology and a promotion. The neighbors cross back to his side of the street. Mr. Kim slides him coffee on the house. Slowly, like a deck rebuilt after storm damage, his life steadies. Yet scars remain. He jumps when a squad car passes. He records encounters just in case. And he never quite trusts silence the way he used to. Still, he buys his own small house, builds a deck for barbecues, fills it with laughter, and remembers that resilience isn't being unbreakable, it's knowing how to rebuild. And as the years pass, he keeps the boy in mind, the kid who saw sadness instead of menace. Maybe he remembers too, because in the end, that's what he wants from us, the listeners. When the next shaky video lands on your feed, when the story fits too perfectly into a prejudice, pause. Ask what's missing, who benefits. Decide if you'll be a spectator in the mob or a witness for the truth. Because his survival wasn't luck, it was a cousin who knew the law, a teacher who kept records, a boy who whispered honesty. Without them, he'd be another statistic. With them, he's standing here, calloused hands still steady, saying softly, "Look closer next time." The wind down begins as the hammering of the tail finally eases, the rhythm of conflict slowing into a calmer breath. Picture him in that workshop he finally owns. Late afternoon lights slanting across clean lumber stacked neatly against the wall, the scent of sawdust not as a battlefield now, but as comfort, almost sweet. He leans on the railing of the deck he built with his own hands, watching his sister laugh with neighbors who once looked away, children running across the grass that was once so carefully policed. The boy in the Superman shirt drifts into his thoughts like a ghost. He hopes the kid found peace, maybe even joy far from that suffocating porch. He feels the scars, yes, but also the quiet strength in knowing he rebuilt himself from rubble. The lesson he leaves with us is whispered more than shouted. Don't rush to judge. Don't let the loudest lie drown the quiet truth. Tomorrow he'll mend a fence, pour coffee strong enough to strip paint, and start again, because honest work, in the end, is the only solid ground a man can stand on.